And that's my question for you, the whole church, as a church, is are we built to last? We're going to read in Nehemiah chapter 9, verse 33 and 38. If you have your Bibles, you can turn to it. If not, you can look up here on the Sky Bible behind me. But you got to trust that Barry's going to put the right thing up there. And sometimes he just throws random stuff up there. You never know. You know, we got to catch him on stuff. Nehemiah 9, 33 through 38. In all that has happened to us, you have remained righteous. You have acted faithfully, while we acted wickedly. And this is a message. This is the Hebrew people making a confession. This is after the wall has been built. They're making this confession to God. This is verse 34. Our kings, our leaders, our priests, and our ancestors did not follow your law. They did not pay attention to your commands or statutes you warned them to keep. Even while they were in their kingdom, enjoying your great goodness to them in spacious and fertile land you gave them, they did not serve you or turn from their evil ways. But see, we are slaves today, slaves in the land you gave our ancestors so they could eat its fruit and the other good things it produces. Because of our sins, its abundant harvest goes to the kings you have placed over us. They rule over our bodies and our cattle as they please. We are in great distress. In a view of all of this, we are making a binding agreement. We are putting it in writing, and our leaders, our Levites, and our priests are affixing their seal to it. How many have ever had something you really wanted it? You wanted it so bad, and then you get it, and it's not really what you expected. Anybody ever had that happen to them? Or just me? All right, and a couple of people. Me and Patty G. That's the only ones. No, thank you. There's several that raise your hand. Well, so here's the thing. I am an Apple guy. I love Apple products, but I was not always that way. If you would rewind and look at me 3 years ago, I hated Apple products. I had an Android phone. I was like, I'll never get Apple. Then my brother-in-law and sister were selling their phones. Julie wanted an iPhone. It was a good deal. Our phones were old. They were going out, so we bought them. After having it and being kind of disgruntled and refusing to like it, even you ever get that thing it's like, you kind of like it, but you complained about it, so now you got to pretend you still don't. So then I realized, well, all right, iPhones are pretty good. And then I read a book that talked about the whole corporation and why they started, and they started not to make things easy for people like you and me, not for businesses and corporations, but people like you and me. And I was like, oh, cool. So I got on this Apple bandwagon. And I got an iPhone, I got an iPad, and I just recently, a couple months ago, I got a MacBook. So I'm all Appled out. So I like Apple products. But now, here's the thing. If you own Apple products, you know there's a catch to this. It's very expensive. I'm going to say it's probably worth it because there's people that have Apple computers that are 12 years old and they're still functioning. Try to get a PC computer to function for 12 years. It just won't happen. You don't ever see anybody pulling out their Tandy 1000 and doing work on it, right? That was the first computer I ever had, Tandy 1000. So I wanted these things, the Apple AirPods. Anybody have any Apple AirPods? Nope. No. All right, some of you guys. Well, here's the thing. I wanted them. I didn't really need them. It's not very often that I use EarPods anyways. But I wanted them, and it's an Apple product, and people brag about them. I went online to look at them, and here's the catch, $250. I'm like, yeah, they're nice. They ain't that nice. All right? But I was wanting them. I was like, man, I would really love to have some Apple AirPods. Well, I was scrolling on Facebook one day, and then lo and behold, an ad pulled up, and it said, Apple AirPods, brand new, $49.99. I said, oh, thank you, Jesus. Thank you, there's a God. And I ordered them. Now, about 6 weeks later, it took about 6 weeks. This is on Amazon Prime. I got them in the mail. The first red flag of this is, well, the package came from China. All right. I opened it up. The box looked just like a box. I've seen the box of the actual Apple AirPod Pros. These are the Pros, not just the regular Apple AirPods, the Pros. I open up the box, excited to try these out. And the second red flag is, well, I've never seen Apple AirPods that are black. Now, have you ever had that, you knew it was wrong, but you're trying to convince yourself, yeah, it's right? Like, well, maybe they made black ones. Maybe they're brand new. Maybe, maybe I got the first ones ever. So I got these, and then I opened them up, and I put them in my ear, and here's the thing. Only one of them worked. I couldn't get them to pair. Like, I'd put them back in the box and then the other one would work. I never could get them both to work at the same time. But like, you know what's wrong, but you're like convinced maybe it's the phone, maybe it's this, that. So I like rocked them for a day. You ever had that? Like you go to a new barber and they give you a bad haircut, and you're like, does it look good? And your friends are like, no, dude, go to another barber quick. But you're just like trying to pull it off. Well, that's kind of what I did. And I was telling my stepdaughter, I was like, look at my new Apple AirPods. And she's like, those aren't Apple AirPods. They're like Apple fake pods. Apple fakes. So I was like, all right. They're not real. After trying to convince myself that they were. I sent for a return through that, and the person responded and said, because I said, these are not Apple AirPods. I said, talking about the only one ear. I put it all down. They're black. And he responded, those are the Euro models. Like, seriously, bro? The Euro models? Like, they only got one ear in Europe? Finally, he came back. This was a process of months. He came back and said, well, we'll offer you a half refund. Will you accept a half refund of $25? I was like, no, bro, I want my full refund. I'm happy to say after a few months, I finally got my full refund. PayPal has this like buyer protection thing, and I got it. They didn't make me send these back because, well, they're from China, but they're useless. If you only want one ear to work at a time, I guess they work. But I feel like so often this is how we look as individuals or as a church. Like, we so much want the real thing, but the real thing's too much work. The real thing is going to cost too much. It's going to require too much. So we just kind of settle for like the knockoff. We settle for the generic. And we try to make it look like it's the real thing. Yeah, only one earpod works, but nobody else knows that. Yeah, I'll suffer through it. They look good. I feel like a lot of times that we do that as the church and individually and within our families. Like, we paint this beautiful picture on Facebook and Instagram, but, well, that's not really how our lives look on the inside. And when people get close to us, they're like, yo, bro, that thing lacks integrity. And then we make the mistake as looking on the outside, we see other people's Facebooks and Instagrams and tweets and whatever else there is up there, Snapchats, I don't know. And we think, man, why can't my life be like that? Yeah. But we're just looking through this window, just getting this picture. Are we really built to last? And in our story, we find this guy Nehemiah, this dude, as he goes to Jerusalem, he's making sure what he is doing, what he's creating, is built to last. You see, anybody can start something, but it's continuing something that's hard. Anybody can leave, staying that's hard. Anybody can receive, but can you give? Anybody can celebrate. We love celebrating, right? But can we sacrifice? Are we built to last? And as we are finishing this final segment of Brick by Brick, I'm hoping more than anything you guys can hear my heart. And I want to tell you that I do not believe this vision that God has given us, given Fairlawn Church, is a short-term vision. But I believe it's a long-term vision. I don't believe that God just wants us to look at this generation right now. We get so consumed with right now. But I believe that He wants us to prepare for the generations that are to come. Why? Because He's the God of Abram, Isaac, and Jacob. He wants us to build something that is built to last. And I want, as people get closer to this community and closer to this church, that it's better than the picture. I hope after people are watching the live stream and then they decide to come, they're like, whoa, that is better than what they're putting out there. Oh yeah, I heard people talking about how great the people are and how loving the people are at Farallon, but you got to go there and experience it in person. Amen. I hope what we're putting out there when they come and see this, and our community sees that, I'm hoping that it's better than the picture we're painting. Amen. We've been studying the life of Nehemiah. Nehemiah is this Old Testament character, and if you've missed all our studies on Nehemiah, that's okay. I'm going to fill you in here. This is where I got stuck on the first service, so I'm going to try to go through it really fast. I know somebody's thinking, well, just skip it and we'll just watch the first service later when we get home. You're not getting all that easy. So Nehemiah is an Old Testament character, and he has an amazing history, and as we study his life, I think the greatest thing about Nehemiah and his story is it's a picture of what's to come. Because it is years later that the true Nehemiah, the true leader, Jesus, comes, and Nehemiah, he sacrifices for others, but it's Jesus that paid the ultimate sacrifice. Nehemiah, his story kind of begins with this word called concern. Nehemiah, he's living in the Persian Empire. He is from the descent of Israel, but he grew up in Babylon. And he's in the Persian Empire, and he is now at this time he is a cupbearer for the king. And I just feel like I got to keep throwing it out there. It is like the worst job ever. Like, his job was to drink the king's wine before he drank it. Why? Because he was checking it for poison. Well, what happens if it has poison? Well, you're out of a job because you're dead. And they get a new cupbearer. So don't come to me complaining about your job unless you're a cupbearer. Any cupbearers in the house this morning? None. All right. I think there was a couple in the first service. So that is his job. He's a cupbearer for the king. He gets word that the people in Jerusalem, because see the Hebrew people, they became slaves of Babylon. And then Babylon, because they came in, took over that area, took people for slaves, and then Babylon was overtaken by the Persian Empire. The Persian Empire King Cyrus decided that he was going to let the people of Israel, the Hebrew people, go back if they wanted to. They didn't make to, but if they wanted to go back to Jerusalem. Well, so there was two big waves that went back. Now, when they went back, one thing that they didn't really, I don't think they expected is, well, the walls were still broken and everything was still tore up from when the Babylon Empire went there and just destroyed everything. So now they're there, but the walls are not built. So these neighboring nations continue to come in there, and they just destroying and causing havoc in Jerusalem. And then taking people as slaves. They just came out of slavery from the Persian Empire. Now they're back because the other nations came in and took them as slaves. Nehemiah gets word about this, and he starts weeping. His heart starts breaking. His heart's not breaking for broken walls, but for broken people, and he is concerned. He drops to his knees and he begins to pray. And during prayer, God gives him a vision. It is out of that concern that he gets clarity. Now, a lot of times, God put us together as a family. This is not meant, Farallon Church is not meant to, it's all Pastor Jimmy or Pastor Mark's ideas, and we're just supposed to kind of just go along for it. No, he put us together as a family to do this thing together, to build the kingdom together. You're here for a reason. We all have different personalities. If you guys know Pastor Mark and I personally, our personalities are like polar opposites. But it's cool how God just makes that work, because we both see things that the other doesn't see, and that's the same thing with you. And there's a lot of times God starts pointing out things, but we don't understand. We kind of just confuse that as, well, we're just going around and complain about it. No, he didn't point that out for you to complain about it. He pointed that out for you to do something about it. And out of his concern, Nehemiah's concern, he gets clarity. God gives him the vision to repair the walls. He didn't just give him the vision. A lot of times we get the vision, but we're like, we want to jump up and go and do that. But a lot of times the vision, it takes patience. We want to jump up and do things. All right, guys, we're going to do this. Well, okay, how are we going to do this, Pastor Jimmy? Now, I don't know. We're just going to kind of move stuff around until it happens. No. He didn't only, during prayer, get the vision, but he got the plan. He got clarity. So when then King Artaxerxes, when he was sitting there and he saw Nehemiah, and he goes, hey, man, Nehemiah, why are you so sad? You're usually all happy and stuff. I don't understand it. Like, you could be drinking poison any minute now, but you're always, like, really happy. Why are you upset? And then at that moment, Nehemiah was able to share his plan. And he said, King, I got word back from my people in Jerusalem. Well, they're in bad shape and they're hurting. And people keep coming in, destroying their walls, taking people as slaves. And now King Artaxerxes, he said, well, what can I do? What can I do to help? Now, this is a miracle in itself because the Persian Empire, the people in Persia, they did not believe in the same God that Nehemiah did. They actually worshipped thousands of gods. So the king just said, what can I do to help? Nehemiah was started into his plan. He said, well, king, I need to go to Jerusalem and help rebuild the walls. But here's the thing. I don't have any money, so I'm going to need you to go to Expedia, and I need you to give me a ticket. Delta Airways, please. King said, done. What else? Well, king, even though I got the flight now, I still don't have any money, and it's going to, like, building materials expensive. Like, you've been to Home Depot and you've been to Lowe's, right? Like, it's going up. Like, I don't have any money to repair it, you know. So the king says, done. Here's my Home Depot card. It's on me. What else? Well, hey, I got all that so far. I'm going to just keep on going. He said, well, when I get to Jerusalem, see, I've never been there before. His heart's breaking for people he's never even seen, never even met. So when I get there, I'm going to be an outsider. They're not going to listen to me. Although I'm Hebrew, I don't look like them, I don't talk like them, I don't dress like them. So what I need you to do for them to take me serious, I need you to officially make me governor over Jerusalem. Done. It was Nehemiah, he prayed. He was concerned. Out of that concern, he got clarity. Out of that concern, he got the God vision. And then he waited. Why? Because waiting works. He waited on God's time. He didn't jump up. If he would have just jumped up and said, King, I need to do this, the king would have just been like, whoa, man. Who works for who here? But he waited for that opportunity. He waited 4 months, actually. So out of that, he got clarity. Next thing, after clarity, in this story comes this whole thing on community. How many of you know that right here, this church, Fairlawn, this is a community? And when God gives you when you get a God vision, it's going to require other people. Nehemiah gets there to Jerusalem, he starts walking around, he said, man, this is a big job. It's going to take more people. Now, what normally happens, especially if you are like me, you get the vision and you get in the middle of it and you realize how much time it's going to take, how big it's going to be, but then you're like, I know I need to like find other people to help, but they're not going to do it like me. I mean, they're not going to like cut out the QR codes like I'm going to do. They're going to leave a little bit of white on there. Like, they're not going to make sure that there's 6 pieces of tape on the double-sided tape on the back of them when they stick them on the chairs. They're probably only going to put 4 and they're going to fall off. You start like looking at all these little things, but here's the thing: is eventually you're going to get into it, like I've done many times, and realize, well, this is going to take more than just me.
We don't even know how to use it.
Because, well, you can go see the ushers, Lisa, and you're one of the ushers. You don't even know how to use it.
I know how to use that.
You look good in the shirt. But he gets there and he realizes, hey, this is going to take a community. And I'm going to tell you this, for God's vision of Fairlawn Church, it's going to take more than Pastor Jimmy and Pastor Mark. It's going to take more than 6 deacons. It's going to take all of us working together, doing our part.
That's right.
Nehemiah gets to Jerusalem and he casts a vision. And he starts delegating responsibility. He has to recruit people. Over the past 2 weeks, I've been pretty encouraged because I start seeing things come together. We've created teams, and we got leaders of the teams, and I'm seeing how all that is just coming into play. And God's just doing some pretty cool things here at Farallon and in this community. And the other day, we got a check in the mail, and it was from a guy. He's never stepped foot in Farallon Church. He's not a member here. He may never even come in here. But he got word that we're building a shower for the homeless over in one of the rooms, and he said, I want to be a part of it. He didn't even ask what we needed. He just wrote out a check for $500 and sent it to us. He just got it in the mail. It's encouraging when people see it and they hear about what's going on and what God's doing here. They're like, whoa, I want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of what God's doing. And I don't care if it's $500, because maybe you're like, well, I can't give $500. It's not about equal amounts, but it's about equal sacrifice. And I don't have to be, I don't care if it's $500. I don't care if it's a child stepping in for the first time in generosity. When we all play our part, anything is possible. We all have to play our part. But what happens next for Nehemiah is, well, he has conflict. He gets there, he starts building the walls. He probably didn't even think about this, but now the surrounding nations, they're like, whoa. You mean I can't just go in there and tear up Jerusalem like we've been doing? Like some of the nations just did it for fun. It was like their hobby. Like they would just go in there and say, oh, we're going to bust down some more walls today. We're bored. So these nations got together and they started causing some conflict. Nehemiah gets word over this, and I want to tell you, the bigger the God vision, the bigger the conflict. When you start fulfilling the vision that God has given you, well, you're going to face obstacles, you're going to face blockages, you're going to face challenges, and you're going to face criticism. How many like criticism? Nobody, right? Nobody's like, woo, criticism. But guess what? It's going to happen. You're going to get as you're doing in your God vision. Why? Because I'm just going to throw this out there. There's somebody out there that wants to stop it. A lot of times we refer to him as the enemy. And just to Satan. Just I know you were kind of looking around at people. Satan, that's who we're talking about. Yeah. I noticed you were looking at Miss Ann. It's not Miss Ann. She's not trying to stop us. Satan, he wants to stop us. So, of course we're going to have conflict. He don't want this thing to happen. So in Nehemiah's case, the one thing I love about Nehemiah, one of the things, is he teaches us how to pivot. And he says, all right, because a lot of times we get in this thing and we think, oh, it's a failed plan. Oh, I'm a failure. Oh, a mess up. It must have not been God. It must have been me. But I'm here to tell you, you're not a failure, and a failed plan is not a failed vision. And he says, all right, guys, we're going to pivot. So from now on, we're going to keep building the walls, but from now on, we got a hammer in one hand and we got a sword in another hand. And I think it's a beautiful picture of the church of Jesus Christ, because it's like whatever is in my hand, that's what I'm going to do. I got a hammer in my hand, I'm going to build. I got a sword in my hand. When conflict comes, I'm going to fight. Because how do you know spiritual warfare is a real thing? And as we go through this, we're going to go through some spiritual warfare. Nehemiah faces conflict, but then finally, there's construction. The scripture says that it only took them 52 days to complete the wall. It was insane. They couldn't believe it. The surrounding nations, only 52 days to build this wall. Why? Because what accelerated this vision? It was community. Everybody getting together. Why? Because collaboration equals, anybody remember? Multiplication. Whatever God originates, guess what? He's going to orchestrate. I want us to get into our spirit this morning that if God started it, God's going to finish it. He's not just a starter, but he's a finisher. The Apostle Paul said, being confident of this, that he who began a good work in me will carry it out until completion, until the day of Christ Jesus. He's a finisher. And how many of you believe that what God started 70 years ago here at Farallon Church, he's going to complete? I had somebody ask me the other day, I was telling them about Farallon and how we became pastors, and I said, we just celebrated 70 years, and it just shows they weren't really thinking. They said, oh, were you there when they started the church? I'm like, bro, how old do you think I am? But I don't care if you've been a part of it for 70 years, 9 months, that's how long we've been here, the Acox and the Lloyd family, 9 months. I don't care if it's been 70 years, 7 months, 7 years, 7 minutes, 7 seconds. If God has put you here, you have your part to play. And this work that He started then, He's going to complete. And we're all a part of that. And as we continue reading this story, we just realize there's so much more. Because a lot of times, you would see, you get the wall built. It's like, all right, we're done. All right, we can relax. But see, Nehemiah didn't just go to Jerusalem to rebuild the wall, but he went there to rebuild the identity and the mindset of the Hebrew people. Because think about it, they're slaves in the Persian Empire. They get free, they go back to Jerusalem, and then you got these surrounding nations coming in and ripping their wives and their kids out of their hands back into slavery. They knew they were God's chosen people, but, well, their identity was lost. And Nehemiah knew, you know what, we can rebuild the walls, we can rebuild the outside, but unless we rebuild the inside, it's just going to happen again. And how do you know we can make a pretty church, we can paint it, we can remodel it, we can do all these things, but it's us, it's the people that make the church. I know a lot of times we refer to the building as the church, we all do it. But truthfully, we are the church. And I can guarantee you, this church falls down this week, I will be here on Sunday saying, hey, we're the church. We're going to continue to do this thing. We're going to continue with this God vision. We're going to continue to do this. You know, we're not going to settle for Apple fakes, right? We want the real thing. We're not going to just settle for just what looks good on the outside relationship with Jesus. We want the real thing. I firmly believe that, I know that God's going to play His part. The question is, are we going to play our part? Because we all have a part to play. I want to show you this morning 3 things from Nehemiah's life. I'm going to do it quickly because I only got like 15 minutes. 3 things that I believe that we got to get into our DNA if we're going to build a community that's going to last. The first thing, we got to assume responsibility. Newsflash, 100% of the stuff, 100% of your life is your responsibility. Wow. And if we're going to build something that lasts, we got to assume responsibility. We have to decide the buck stops here, and until you and I assume responsibility, somebody else is always going to be running our lives. I think we've all been there, right? Like the blame game, where, well, I can't do this because of that person. I'm in this situation because of that person. I've heard so many times in my few years of pastoring, well, I don't understand why God's allowing this to happen. It's like, whoa. God didn't make you do all those things leading up to where you're at now. We got to assume the responsibility. We got to say, hey, this is on us. And that's what we're reading in the beginning verses here is the Hebrew people are giving a confession to God, and they're saying, hey, we got ourselves in this mess. And we don't want it to happen again. Amen. And what they're saying, so what we're going to do is we are going to put it in writing, and we are going to assume the responsibility that we messed up, that we sinned against God, and because what's happened to us is because of our wicked ways. They assumed the responsibility. Now, I'm just going to throw this out there. It doesn't happen a whole lot, but every now and then, Julie and I will get into an argument. Really, truthfully, she needs prayer. She gets out of her covering sometimes, and just kidding. But we do. There's been some arguments here and there, And I asked her. Now, I did get permission to share this for some of you guys freaking out. Okay. There was one time when we were doing Blueprint that she walked out on one of my messages. It happened. For real. Because what I did is I got up and I started sharing something similar to this of an argument. She wasn't ready for it. And she felt like everybody was staring at her, so she got up and left. Now, here's the thing. I don't know that many of you guys up here preaching, but like it's okay, like if you guys walk out, but when your spouse walks out during your message, it makes it a little hard to finish it, all right? And of course, as soon as it was over, I was mad. And I couldn't believe it. She walked out on him. And it became this big fight. Now, instead of me just saying, all right, Jimmy, you're an idiot, just throwing it all out there like this, and you should talk. And from that, I learned that when I share a story that involves my wife, I talk to her first. No surprises. And I usually start out like how I did this time and said, hey, baby, I think I might share this. Maybe. I'm still thinking about it. And then like 5 minutes before I walk up there, yeah, I'm going to share it. Kind of like that. But here's the thing. Through that, and although she was mad at me for sharing it, I was mad at her for getting up and leaving. And I was kind of just admitting it. I was kind of acting like a 12-year-old boy, like not talking to her. Like when we get in arguments, it's kind of like passive-aggressive. It's like side hugs, cheek kisses, Like, all right, see you later, God bless, but not really, type thing. It's not really a lot of passive-aggressive stuff. It's not like we're yelling at each other. But after like a couple of days, my wife finally, she said, all right, my husband's not going to be man enough to so she said, Jimmy, we need to talk, and she sat me down, and instead of like pointing out my weaknesses, she started to share the things that she thought she could have done better and how she thought she could handle it better. You ever had like, you're mad, but you're like heart's breaking? Yeah. And you're like, I love you too. Such a terrible husband. I'm not worthy. Like you just kind of break out into like boys to men, like stop pointing fingers. The blame is on me. Like, I want a new life, and I want it with you. Just kind of that kind of stuff happens. But it happened because my wife was willing. She's like, well, my husband ain't going to man up and do what he's supposed to do, so I'm going to start this thing. And instead of pointing out my weaknesses, because how you start pointing out someone else's weaknesses, they're going to get like, well, no, how about when you did this? But instead, she started pointing out her weaknesses, how she thought she could do better and what she could do. And then because of that, it softened my heart. And why? Because she was accepted responsibility. And that's why I believe that is a picture of what God is wanting us to do, is to accept, to assume responsibility. The next thing, number 2, that he wants that did is they created accountability. Nehemiah creates accountability. If you want to build something that's going to last, you have to actually live a life of accountability. I mean, how anything healthy is going to be hard, right? You don't believe me? Try to eat healthy for a month. It's hard. Healthy body, hard. Healthy mind, hard. Healthy emotions, hard. Healthy family, hard. Healthy marriage, hard. Healthy church, hard. Like we want to point out, like when there is an unhealthy church, we want to point that out, and we want to talk about it, but we don't really take into account. It's like a healthy church is hard. It takes work. Here's the definition of accountability. Accountability, the ability to take account for your actions. And listen to me, you cannot account for what's kept in secret. If you're keeping it a secret, meaning secrecy destroys accountability. That's why you must decide today that, hey, I want to live a life of accountability. And to do that, you have to make it clear what your convictions are and what your commitment is. Convictions, your values. Commitment, your behavior. I'm not going to make anybody raise their hand because that would be very uncomfortable, but how many of you've gone through your life and it just kind of dawns on you, well, the things that I say I want to be is a lot different than what I'm actually doing. Like it just like kind of hits you like a slap in the face. Well, I'm saying I want to do this, but then I turn around and do that. I tell people all the time, when I get up and do a message, I know within that week, is like, oh yeah, you really believe that? Let's see how you handle what you just talked about. And I've not always done a good job, just throwing it out there. And I just want to throw this out there, because a lot of times we have a misconception of what accountability is. Accountability is not somebody calling you up saying, hey, what did you do wrong today? What accountability is, you calling somebody up saying, hey, this is my weakness, this is where I'm at, I'm telling people I want to be like this, but I'm actually putting my place in this situation, and I need you to hold me accountable. Oh, well, I just ended up doing it because nobody held me accountable. No. It's not their job. It's your job to make yourself accountable. And this goes back to Nehemiah chapter 9. Is they don't only say they don't only repent, they don't only say, God, we are sorry for what we've done. They said, this is how we want to be, and we're going to be accountable for it because we're going to actually write it down. And we are going to have the Levites stamp it and seal it. And it's going to be displayed where everybody knows. You know, we have a lot of differences. And as we go through this, and in community, we're going to have different mindsets and people seeing different things different ways, and growing up different. It has a lot to do with that. And that's why we felt like it was important to list our 7 values. And we actually did the 7 values when it was Blueprint, and then Pastor Mark and I got together and we changed them up a little bit. Do we have the 7 values? Do we have those up there? And somehow we are going to display these. Somewhere, if you go in the fellowship hall, you see the Blueprint experiences values. But here's our 7 values. This is what's going to hold us accountable. These are our values. Jesus is our message. People are our hearts. It's kind of hard to complain about other people and say, I don't want them coming to church here. Well, I thought people were your heart. Generosity is our privilege. Excellent is our spirit. Becoming sons and daughters is our identity. And sometimes we have a hard time accepting that we are actually sons and daughters. Honor is your calling. And passion is our pursuit. We're going to have these things, and we're going to list them so that we hold ourselves accountable. We hold ourselves accountable for these things. There is one with the old values. So, third thing that they did is, Nehemiah and the Hebrew people, they live in legacy. It's important for us to live in legacy. Legacy is ultimately the story that people are going to tell about you when you're gone. And I think it's safe to say that Nehemiah, this man who was a slave and had the worst job ever, but he simply trusted God. And he has an incredible legacy. I mean, we're sitting here talking about him thousands of years later. And see, here's the thing. The goal is not for us to live forever. Okay? The goal is not for Fairlawn Church to be here forever. The people may change, the building may change, the name may change, all of these things may change. But the thing is not for us to leave that, but for us to leave things here that will last forever until Jesus returns. It's a legacy. And the only way for us to do that, it's by generosity. Generosity, by definition, is to give more than what is required. That's the definition of generosity. So when you choose to live a life of generosity and you want to know how to live a life of generosity, find out what's required and say, I'm going to go beyond that.
That's right.
I'm going to be generous of my finances. I'm going to be generous of my time. I'm going to be generous of my resources. No, I just want to throw this out there, and I want to tell you this, and I want to make no mistake. If you volunteer here at Fairlawn Church, if you give of your finances, if you give of your time, that's not going to get you to heaven.
That's right. Preach that.
But what I hope you get in your heart is, because of that, because of you serving, because of you giving. It's quite possible, probably going to happen, that somebody else is going to get to hear the gospel.
Yeah.
And because of that, they'll receive salvation. It may be people that you never even meet. You never even hear their entire story. But when you get to heaven, you're just going to know, I had something to do with that. Why? Because of my generosity. Because of my giving. You see, Nehemiah, he went to Jerusalem out of brokenness for people, but he quickly became a man on a mission. Why? Because he was fueled by his love for God. His heart broke for the same thing that God's heart breaks for. Let me just ask you, is your heart breaking for the same thing that God's heart's breaking for? Are you complaining about the same thing that God would complain about or that God would talk about? No. A lot of times it's no. I ask myself that all the time. Through this series, I've asked, does my heart break for things? And I know what's going to happen as this week, I'm going to go to Walmart or Walgreens or Target or something, and somebody's going to cut line in front of me. And I'm going to want to say, hey, buddy, line starts back there. And then God's going to go like, whoa, would that upset me, Jimmy? I say, well, God, if you told Barry that you were going to be at the church in 20 minutes and it's already been 30 minutes, maybe. It's never happened, though. We're not talking about you, Lisa. As we read the story of Nehemiah, I think it becomes very apparent that Nehemiah is not concerned about what other people say about him, about people. But Nehemiah is doing this for an audience of one, for the applause of one. Tell you guys, this is not our story. And Chantel, you can come on up here. Play something really spiritual to make this all fit in. Sound good? But he's motivated by the applause of one. This is not our story. This is his story. We're just in this story. And that's our legacy. His story. Being a part of his story. That's our legacy. Look at Nehemiah chapter 13, verse 31. This is the last sentence and the last verse of Nehemiah. And it says this. It says, remember me with favor, my God.
Yes.
He doesn't say, I hope everybody else remembers me.
Come on.
Let's build a big statue of Nehemiah.
That's right.
Let them know what I did, what I sacrificed. Make sure you put in that thing about the sword and the hammer. Thing's pretty cool. No. He says, remember me with favor, my God. See, that's how generosity works. See, this is the thing. A lot of times we do things. We do a lot of things. Listen, I'm not pointing fingers because I do this. A lot of times we do things for the applause of men and the applause of people. I've done it. I've been guilty of it. I'm a people pleaser, you know. When I do something that makes other people happy, I'm like, ooh, I feel good. But here's the thing, is like when you do stuff for other people, you may get that applause, that temporary, whoa, way to go. But eventually they're going to forget. You're not going to forget because then you're going to be like, whoa, they don't remember when I did this for them. But here's the thing, when we do it for God, He's never going to forget about it. So maybe you may give in the offering here at Fairlawn Church and give of your finances. And most likely you're not going to have somebody come up and say, whoa, dude, it's awesome. You gave $1,000. Woo! Sorry if we put your picture up on the screen with $1,000 there. Probably not. Probably not going to get it from me because it's very rare that I even know how much people give. I like to keep it that way. You may serve on the welcome team. You may serve in the sound booth. You may be on the worship team. You may serve as an usher. There may be a good chance that you never have somebody come up and go, whoa, you passed that offering plate like a pro, man. It almost looked like a Frisbee going there. Yeah? Rocky, you sent it to Steve and he caught it. Wow, it's a great show. Probably never going to happen. No, I don't give people enough time to give. But when you do it for an audience of one, it doesn't matter who applauds you. It doesn't matter who notices it. Because you're not doing it for men. We're going to face conflict. Right now, there's some things that, I feel there's some people here, right now, there's some things that concern you about your family. Maybe it's about the church. Maybe it's about your own life. I'm telling you, out of that concern, if you give it over to God, through that concern, He's going to give you a God vision. And through that concern, you're going to get clarity. And if it's truly a God vision, whether it's something that He's through the church or through yourself, it's going to require other people. Why? Because it's a God, and He's all about community. He's all about putting us together. He's not looking to isolate us. He don't want to isolate you from everybody else. It's not how God operates. He's put you in this community for a reason. Just want to warn you, as you get through it, you're going to face conflict. Because the bigger the God vision, the bigger the conflict. He is constructing something right now. I'm not talking about a building, but I'm talking about people. About a community that people are their heart. You know, with accepting responsibility, I mentioned it a little last week, but you know, raising kids can be hard. I got 3 kids. I got a 17-year-old, we got a 13-year-old, we got a 7-year-old, almost 8. 17's are almost 18. Woo! Out of the house, right? Yeah, right. And here's the they don't pay bills. Keep trying to get the 7-year-old to get a job. She just won't do it. There's a lot of responsibility that comes with that. This past week, our 17-year-old got in an accident. I was at the dentist. I had to leave the dentist, drive to Vero. She was freaking out. She hit a culvert. And it was aggravating. But here's something. When it comes to my kids, there's something that I will never do. I would never take that responsibility and hand it to you. Because they're my kids. Maybe at times it seems like a burden, but it's not. It's actually one of the joys of life. Is being, and I would never take my responsibility and give it to you. And it'd be easy for us to say, well, there's a lot of churches in Fort Pierce. There's a lot of churches that are going out and working with the community. Let's just sit back. Let's just be a social club. Let's just do. I don't know about you, but I don't want to hand my responsibility over as a church and this community to somebody else. I want to accept that responsibility. I want to accept that responsibility. Nehemiah, when we talk about him, he was a great leader and a great man, but he's just a shadow of the one to come. You see, Jesus came, and He assumed the responsibility. He came on a mission, which is, I'll take your sin. It was in the Garden of Gethsemane. He created accountability. He goes to the cross, and we see His determination. We see His commitment to you and me. We know that Jesus, He lived for a legacy. I mean, we're still talking about Him today. He's going to be talked about until the end of time. He went to the cross, and on that cross, He took all of our sins, all of our mistakes, all of our mishaps, all of our shame. He took the things that you don't want anybody else to know about. He took those things that you've been keeping secret. He took that pain. He took all of it. And this morning, some of you, you're carrying around this burden of shame and guilt, And I just want to tell you, it is not your burden to carry. Jesus wants to carry it. But you have to acknowledge him. You have to surrender. It was on that cross that he declared it's finished. Well, it's finished the power of sin, the power of law. He went to the grave, but 3 days later he resurrected, and he's alive, and he's active in our lives. And I just want to tell you, it's not about what you see on the outside. It's not about what you feel. Well, I'm not getting the goosebumps. It's not about that. I just want to tell you this is a song we sang earlier. Even when you don't see him, he's working. Even when I don't feel him, he's working. Take comfort in he's never going to stop working in your life. Pastor Mark?